Hi, this is Brian Fogarty, and this is a video for Chapter 5 of the book Quantitative Social Science Data with our second edition. So in this video, what we're going to do is take a look at how to remove characters in variables. So when we read in data, especially secondary data, sometimes there are characters in there either with the names of the variables or the values such as percentages, or it could be like dollar signs or pound signs or something like that for the values itself, which causes problems. One, it could just be we don't like the name, how the variables are named, but for the values, if there's characters in them, then we can't run statistical analysis. Kind of standard statistical analysis, because it will be like, I don't know what this symbol is. This is not a number. So it's very idiosyncratic, and the solutions are very idiosyncratic to the problem that you have. But let's go through an example that is in the chapter. So let's first read in a data set that I'm going to save as school. And I'm going to read this in. So it's a CSV, so we're going to use read_CSV. So this data is on Indiana State in the U.S. School referendum data. So school referendums are voters vote on. Usually it's some sort of tax increase to increase teachers' salaries, or fund a new building, or repairs to a building, or something like that. And so this data is compiled by Indiana University, a center there, about whether or not it passed, what it was about, like what was the margin, stuff like that. All right, so let's read this in. So the data is called Indiana School Referendum Data.csv. Let's just read this in and take a look, okay? All right. Okay, so we see that. Let's take a glimpse at it. Glimpse school. Okay, so we see there's a handful of variables here, and we see that these variables, they have spaces. So what read CSV does is that it adds those slanted. I can never remember the name of it, but the slanted ticks or whatever around it to say, like, this is one thing, because there's that white space between date and of, and between of and referendum. What we can do is we can reread in using the name repair option. Again, not without a dot in front, or a period, or full stop. So let's do this name repair, and let's do universal. Okay, and then we'll run the glimpse with it as well. Actually, I should scroll up here. So it reads it in, and it tells us it has changed these. So new names. What it did was it filled in the white space with a dot or period here. Okay. This one there's two, because corp is abbreviated with a period, and then there's a space, so there's two there. All right, so we might be fine with that. That might be like totally cool as a moose, everything is great. But we also might want to change it because we don't like it. Let's look at before we get going here, let's look at the values themselves. All right, so we have the date of the referendum. So this is when it occurred. This is right, because it's in the U.S. This is the date goes month, day, year. So this would be May 4th, 2010. Excuse me. So we might want to change this in some way, the date, because we don't like it. It really depends. We can leave it. If we're not going to use it, we could just leave it and be like, I don't really care. But we might want to change it. Another thing is for the variables down here, %for, %against, margin, for, against, we see that there's percentage signs. And you see, even though these are numbers, we see that they're classified as character. It's because of the % sign here. So if we're going to use this in analysis, we got to get rid of it. I think that doing this, working with trying to get rid of these characters, is probably one of the more sort of difficult things that people just starting to use R deal with, because it's just not as intuitive as some of the other stuff. All right, so we are going to do a whole bunch of things at one time. So in the chapter, we kind of go step by step, and then we show it all at once. Let's do it all at once. All right, so I'm going to create a new data object here that we're going to save everything to. So school 1, very informative. From school, we're going to use piping here. And we are going to use the mutate function, which we haven't talked about in videos yet. So the mutate function is used to create new variables, to change variables and save them as something else. Well, I guess not always. I guess you could say the same thing. So in Stata, this is like the generate, unless they changed it. I mean, you say in a while. But this is what we use. This is sort of like the workhorse of doing recoding and variable manipulation. All right, so we are going to use a bunch of different things at once here. We're going to get rid of the percentages. We're going to change some stuff, and we'll also change the date. Again, you may or may not need to use a date. It really depends. But not only is it in this format, we see that it's also a character. But if we're actually doing something with date where like time matters, we actually want to convert it to a different type that R is recognizing as date or time. Okay, so let's get started here. So we're going to use the mutate function, and we're going to create 4 new variables. The first one is %_4. This is what we're calling it. So this is our new variable, what the name of our new variable. We're going to say equals, and we're going to use this shortcut function that's part of readr, which is readr's part of tidyverse, called parse number. We could do, which we'll see in a minute, we could do a replace with a string replace to get rid of the percentage. But this is really nice because it's much simpler. Okay, so we're going to do parse number, and then in parentheses we are going to do %.for. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing for against. So I'm going to go outside this first parenthesis. I'm going to do a comma. So by doing it like this, we can do multiple new variables within the same mutate function specification. We're going to do %against, and the same thing, parse number %.against. Okay, and then also margin. We see that is percentage. We want to get rid of it. So what parse number is going to do is that it's going to get rid of the percentage sign. It's going to just throw it out. Another thing I should mention is that when we use mutate, it's always a good idea to create a new variable with a different name. So like, just so that we don't mess it up in some way. So R is actually way more forgiving than Stata is, maybe other packages or statistical programs, where it's not as like messed up that in a situation where you overwrite the existing variable and you have to like do all these things to get it back. It's actually much easier to work with that, but still, it's always good practice to create a new variable name instead of just overwriting the old one. That's why I always do like the 1. Like instead of school, right? I create a new object called school1. Okay, we're going to do margin, same thing, parse number. All right, and this is margin for against, comma, and then just to show you kind of what these things look like. Oh, not data. Let's create a new variable called date, and this variable is the point of what we're doing here is we're just going to like declare that this is a date variable. So instead of parse number, we have parse date. You can see that parse date time. So if we had time as part of that as well, we could use that. And then it is date of referendum. Okay, this is one of the things you have to like totally look up, because you have to say like, well, what is the current format? Because there could be so many different kinds of formats of what the date is. Here for this one, we use this. We say it's percentage sign M for month, forward slash percentage sign D for day, forward slash, and then percentage sign capital Y for year. All right. So that's the those are the 4 new variables we're going to create, and then we have to have this closed, the second parenthesis, and you can see when I like toggle back and forth, it highlights the beginning, so it closes the mutate function. We're going to use piping because we're going to do more stuff in this. We are going to rename a bunch of these variables, and we're going to do multiple things at once, which I guess is might be a little confusing. We want to get rid of the capitalization so that everything's lowercase, and we also want to get rid of the periods so that instead of periods, they're underscores. All right. So we are going to do rename with, and then I'm going to use tilde, and by using it like that, it's referencing that we're doing it for all the variables. Okay, we're going to use a function called string to lower, or str. So this is from the stringr package, which is part of tidyverse. It's loaded already. When you load tidyverse, and so what it does is so strings are characters. It's the same thing. I mean, maybe not technically, but essentially. All right. So we have that, and then we're going to wrap that around a second string function, and this is string replace all, and then open parenthesis there. So str underscore replace underscore all. So this function, what it does is that it finds some character or sequence of characters and replaces it with something else. Okay, so we want it to apply to all the variables. So we are going to put a period to do that, and then comma, and then you can kind of see this yellow box here is floating up here, telling us what is the pattern to look for. Like what do you want to find to replace? So this is a little tricky. So in stringr, they have their own pattern recognition, but they also use regex, regular expression, and this is just computer programming stuff to find characters or different symbols or whatever. It can actually be a little confusing because some things, again, stringr has like their own version of some things that sometimes seem to work, and then regex is completely different because regex is generalized, can be applied like anywhere. So sometimes you have to play around with it to figure out what works. Okay, so we're going to do quote, and we're going to do a double backslash, and this is a stringr thing. A double backslash is how we specify the symbol or character or whatever that we want it to find. We want it to find period, okay, and then we're going to add a plus. And what the plus does is that it says find it if it exists one or more times. If we didn't put the plus, it would just find the first instance. So like with the school corp locale here, there's 2. So it would just find the first one and not all of them. All right. And then what we wanted to do is, so we close outside the quote, we do a comma, and then quote again, and then we do an underscore. So what that does is that it says, okay, for all the variables, find the period, find one or more periods within the variable name, and when you find the period, replace it with an underscore. All right. We're going to do piping again, and we are going to get rid of the old versions of the variables that we created the new versions for. I mean, you could leave them, right? That's totally fine. But we might want to like clean it up and then save the data, write the data, and just have like a nice, simple, clean version. All right, so we're going to get rid of a bunch. So we looked at this in a previous video where you can do select, where select is like subsetting, right? That's how we subset for certain variables. To get rid of it, we do a minus. But because we want multiple here, we're going to do minus and then C, the C function, the concatenate function, and then all the stuff we don't want. All right, we're going to get rid of date. Oh, sorry, date of referendum. Now, notice that date of referendum, if we look down here, is not an actual variable. That's not a named variable. But because of this line, this replace with, this creates that variable. But we want to, so we want to get rid of it. So I know I'm sorry, I'm being confusing here. Let me just show you. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a hash there, and that stops it from going. And then let's just take a look at this. That's why sometimes it's good to do it step by step and then put it all together at the end. All right. So I ran that. There was no errors. I'm going to do glimpse school 1. Okay. So I come back up here. You can see that it's been replaced with date underscore of underscore referendum. So that's where this is coming from. I knew what it looked like, and so I just jumped the gun and started adding it in. We're going to get rid of, what else? Percent for, percent against, and then margin for against. Again, you don't have to do this. This last line is just to clean up the data. Going to get rid of that so that it continues to the next line. Highlight all that, run that. Okay, no errors, and then we will do a glimpse just to double check to see if it worked. So glimpse school 1. All right, so we see now these variables have been removed. We see our percent for, percent against, excuse me, margin, right? So they don't have the percentages anymore. And we can see date, and this has been converted. And you see here, now it says date instead of character. And it's converted to the way, I mean, we can change this as well, but it's just converted to a default way within R. All right, so I knew this was kind of a longer video, but working through and figuring out how to replace characters can be a little tricky. And as I said, it can be very idiosyncratic. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.